So reflect for a moment back on our recent conversations about epistemology when we were looking at empiricism and rationalism and exploring the thinking of people like Locke and Descartes and Berkeley and Leibniz. And you'll recognize that although each of them comes to a different conclusion about how we acquire knowledge about reality, they all share this fundamental assumption that we can in fact acquire knowledge about reality. They all work from the assumption that it's possible for us to have experiences and to extract from those experiences beliefs and thoughts about reality, and those beliefs and thoughts will to some degree correspond with the way that reality actually is. So you take somebody like Locke, who says, you're never going to have a direct experience of reality. It's always going to be an experience that's mediated through your sense organs. But nonetheless, these experiences that you have of reality are going to result in a representation of that reality in your mind that to some degree corresponds with the way that that reality outside of yourself actually is. And this fundamental assumption is going to allow them to make statements about the way that things are. So they might say something like, look, 2 plus 2 equals 4. And that statement's true, not because I think it's true, not because there is a majority opinion that says it's true. It's true by these principles of mathematics, so addition and equality, that seem to be a part of underlying reality. Similarly, a statement like, people sometimes sit in chairs. That statement's not true for one person and false for another. That's a report about the way that things actually are. It seems to be the case that reality includes the phenomenon of people sometimes, some places, sitting in chairs. Statement like Jupiter is farther from Earth than Mars. It's not true when it's coming out of the mouth of an astronomer and false when it's coming out of my mouth. Okay, who's saying these statements doesn't determine whether or not they're true. They seem to be statements that line up with features of reality that exists separately from us as subjective experiencing selves. Same thing with a statement like loaded functioning handguns can be dangerous. All right, now think about these statements and what it means to say that they're true or false, and how we determine whether or not they're true or false, and what these statements are about, and compare them to a statement like this: I love my spouse. Is it possible that this statement coming out of one person's mouth could be true and the exact same words coming out of another person's mouth could be false? Yeah. What about a statement like IPAs are the best style of beer? Is it possible for that statement to come out of my mouth and be true, which it would be, but come out of the mouth of somebody who hates bitter beers and have it be false? I mean, it's like, you don't really believe that. You're just saying that. That is not a true statement. And we would say that it's not true, not because of the words themselves, but because of who is saying the statement. If it's somebody that we know hates bitter beers, they're not going to say this and have it be a true statement. Same thing with vacationing in Maui can be fun. Smooth jazz is soothing. These statements have truth values, just like the statements on this side of the screen. But the truth values of these statements seems to be determined by the person who's offering them. In other words, whether each of these statements is true or false is relative to the person who's making the statements. But that is not the case for these statements over here. 2 plus 2 does not equal 4, or 2 plus 2 equals 4 is not a true statement for me and a false statement for you. Okay? So we can verify the truth values of these statements by objective standards. But these are going to be much more subjective. These are statements that are simply reporting idiosyncratic, individual, or group sort of belief about things. But it's not actually making a report about the way that things are separate from the person who's making the report. Now, I'm saying this to you because we looked at empiricism and rationalism. There are a whole bunch of other theories of knowledge, one of which is related to what's called philosophic relativism. Okay? So epistemological relativism holds that there is no truth that can be known about the world out there. All we know are individual and collective impressions. And facts are really just opinions that are backed by force, okay? So take these 3 principles. Everything is relative, everything, not just reports of ice cream flavor, preferences, and that kind of thing. All claims to knowledge are really just reports of our individual or our collective impression of things. So it's not actually the case that Jupiter is farther than Earth than Mars. That's just something that most people have agreed to. And the fact that most people have agreed to it gives that statement a kind of force. and then it gets translated into fact. Okay, we call that fact, but really a relativist would say it's not a fact in the way that we ordinarily think about facts that Jupiter is farther away from Earth than Mars. It's just an opinion that we have collectively. Now, epistemological relativism, seems to lead kind of inevitably to ethical relativism. Ethical relativism holds that there's no ethical or moral truths that exist. There is no truth when it comes to morality that exists outside the individual. All we know are our individual or group beliefs about things. And we have feelings and we have beliefs about what kinds of things are right, what kinds of things are wrong, but there's nothing that exists outside of ourselves that we would use to judge those feelings or those beliefs. They're all sort of subjective experiences. And similar to the epistemological relativist, an ethical relativist is going to say there are no moral truths. You say torturing and killing innocent babies for fun is immoral. That's just an opinion that a lot of people agree with, but there's actually nothing objectively wrong with torturing and killing small children. All right, so before we get into some ethical theories, or I shouldn't say it that way, the first kinds of ethical theories we need to look at and evaluate are some relativistic theories. We need to understand these theories and evaluate how viable are these? Are they consistent? Do they allow for impartiality? Are they logical? All right, so that's what we'll start to do in the next couple of videos, is look at some ethical relativism.